It all started during Sunday brunch. Grandma Dolores, a feisty 72-year-old with an uncanny knack for surprising the family, slammed her coffee cup down on the table and announced, "I'm joining a soccer team." The room went silent. Even Uncle Mark, who usually couldn't go 10 minutes without cracking a joke, was left speechless. "Soccer?" my cousin Jenna finally managed to ask. "You mean like actual running and kicking?" Grandma nodded firmly. "That's right. I saw a flyer for the Silver Strikers, a local league for mature adults. They need one more player and I'm in." We all exchanged nervous glances. Grandma Dolores was the kind of woman who still used a flip phone because smartphones are for show-offs, and she called soccer kickball until approximately 3 minutes ago. "Are you sure about this, Grandma?" I asked cautiously. "Of course I'm sure," she shot back, her eyes gleaming. "You all think I'm just some old lady who knits and bakes cookies. Well, guess what? This old lady's got moves." By the following week, Grandma had bought herself a pair of bright red cleats because red is intimidating, she explained, and a neon yellow jersey that practically glowed in the dark. She even dug up an old whistle from her days as a playground monitor. "I don't think you're supposed to bring your own whistle, Grandma," Jenna said. "Why not?" "It's a power move," Grandma replied, giving it a sharp blow. Her first practice was unforgettable. The Silver Strikers, a mix of retirees and overly enthusiastic middle-aged folks, welcomed her with open arms. Coach Ed, a wiry man with a megaphone, gave a brief rundown of the game plan. "All right, folks, we're here to have fun, but let's not forget, this is a competitive league," he said, pacing the field. "We've got a big match against the Golden Gliders next week, so let's hustle." Grandma raised her hand. "Question. What happens if someone fouls me?" Coach Ed blinked. Well, it depends on the severity, but usually a penalty is given." Grandma smirked. "Good to know." As practice began, it became immediately clear that Grandma had a unique approach to the game. While most players focused on passing and dribbling, Grandma treated every moment like a battle for survival. "Dolores, you're supposed to pass the ball," shouted Barry, a friendly retiree with a knee brace. "I don't pass," Grandma replied, sprinting down the field with surprising speed. "I score." And she did, sort of. Grandma's first goal was less of a graceful kick and more of a chaotic collision with the goalie, followed by the ball somehow rolling into the net. "Goal!" she yelled, raising her arms triumphantly. Coach Ed rubbed his temples. "Let's call that creative." But the real highlight of practice came when someone from the opposing team, who had stopped by to watch, made a snarky comment about the Silver Strikers' age. Grandma didn't hesitate. She grabbed her whistle, blew it loudly, and marched right up to the man. "Listen here, Sonny," she said, poking him with the whistle. "You can call us old, but don't forget, experience beats youth. And if you try to pull any fancy moves, I've got a mean hip check." The man took a step back, clearly unsure if she was joking. Spoiler, she wasn't. Practice day 2 was when Grandma Dolores truly found her groove, or, more accurately, unleashed her chaos. The Silver Strikers were running passing drills when Grandma decided passing was for people who can't finish the job themselves. "Dolores, the point is to work as a team," Coach Ed shouted, his voice cracking slightly. Grandma waved him off. "Teamwork is fine and all, but sometimes a strong individual effort is what's needed. Watch and learn." And with that, she launched herself into a one-woman charge toward the goal, weaving through her own teammates with all the grace of a charging bull. I couldn't help but laugh from the sidelines. I had volunteered to be moral support, which really just meant sitting in a folding chair and pretending I wasn't recording her every move on my phone. "Your grandma is something else," one of the other players' daughters whispered, leaning toward me. "Trust me," I replied, grinning. "You have no idea." Her determination was admirable, if not entirely effective. At one point, she tripped over the ball and tumbled into the goalpost, but instead of looking embarrassed, she jumped up, adjusted her jersey, and shouted, "That's how you intimidate the enemy." Coach Ed looked like he might cry. The real moment of the day, though, came during the scrimmage. Grandma had taken up her position as a striker, by choice, of course, when Barry from midfield accidentally passed the ball to someone on the opposing side. "Barry," Grandma bellowed. "What are you doing?" Barry stammered. "It was an accident." Grandma didn't wait for an explanation. She took off after the opposing player like a woman possessed, her bright red cleats flashing in the sun. "Dolores, no slide tackles." Coach Ed yelled, but it was too late. Grandma didn't slide tackle. She hip-checked the poor man so hard that he spun like a top, losing both the ball and his balance. "Fair play," Grandma shouted, scooping up the ball and sprinting toward the goal. The referee blew his whistle furiously, but Grandma ignored him. She shot the ball into the net, turned to the team, and yelled, "Now that's how you win." The field went silent for a moment before the opposing player, still sprawled on the ground, groaned, "Is this soccer or roller derby?" Grandma smirked. "It's both if you're doing it right." By the end of practice, the Silver Strikers were a mix of inspired and terrified. Barry muttered something about needing shin guards, while Coach Ed pulled Grandma aside. "Dolores," he said carefully, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but maybe dial it down just a notch?" Grandma crossed her arms. "Ed, if I dial it down, we'll lose." "Is that what you want?" Coach Ed sighed. "Let's revisit this conversation later." As we walked back to the car, Grandma turned to me, her eyes sparkling. "So, how'd I do?" I bit my lip, trying not to laugh. "You were unforgettable." "Good," she said, nodding firmly. "Because next week, the Golden Gliders won't know what hit them." The week leading up to the game against the Golden Gliders was a whirlwind. Grandma Dolores took preparation to a level none of us expected. She'd cleared out a corner of her garage and turned it into a makeshift training zone. I walked in one afternoon to find her juggling a soccer ball with surprising skill, while Rusty, the neighbor's mischievous beagle, barked excitedly from the corner. "You're getting good at this," I said, genuinely impressed. "Good." Grandma huffed, balancing the ball on her knee. "I'm aiming for legendary." Her commitment didn't stop at ball control. By midweek, she'd ordered shin guards, wristbands, and, most concerning, a pair of fingerless gloves. "What are those for?" I asked. "Intimidation," she replied, pulling them on with a flourish. I decided not to press further. On game day, Grandma was a woman on a mission. She marched onto the field with her head held high, her neon jersey practically glowing in the afternoon sun. The Silver Strikers lined up nervously beside her, while the Golden Gliders, a team of equally spry retirees, eyed her warily. Coach Ed gave his usual pep talk, but Grandma was already locked in, bouncing on her toes like a boxer before a fight. "Remember, Dolores," Coach Ed said, pulling her aside, "it's about having fun." "Winning is fun," she replied, striding onto the field. From the moment the whistle blew, it was clear this wasn't going to be a normal match. The Golden Gliders were surprisingly coordinated, passing the ball with precision. But they weren't prepared for Grandma's unique tactics. She intercepted their first attempt with a perfectly timed hip check, sending their star striker sprawling. "Clean play," she shouted as the referee blew his whistle. It was not clean, the striker groaned, brushing grass off his shorts. The next 10 minutes were a mix of brilliance and chaos. Grandma managed to score twice, once by sheer determination and once because the goalie was too distracted arguing with the referee. But her crowning moment came midway through the second half. Barry, who was somehow still on the team despite his questionable passing skills, accidentally kicked the ball toward their own goal. Grandma saw it happening and launched into action. She sprinted across the field, her red cleats kicking up dirt, and dove in front of the ball just as it reached their goalie. Instead of simply blocking it, she deflected it back with her knee, sending it flying toward midfield. The crowd, mostly families and neighbors, burst into applause. Grandma turned to Barry and shouted, "That's how you save a game." Barry just nodded, too stunned to respond. The final minutes of the match were pure comedy gold. At one point, Grandma used her whistle to distract an opposing player, causing him to pass the ball straight to her. "Is that even allowed?" someone from the Golden Glider shouted. If it wasn't, they wouldn't sell whistles. Grandma shot back, dribbling the ball toward the goal. When the final whistle blew, the Silver Strikers had won 4-3. The team erupted into cheers, with Coach Ed looking more relieved than celebratory. Grandma, of course, took a victory lap around the field, waving her whistle triumphantly. As we packed up to leave, I couldn't help but smile. "You really are something else, Grandma." She grinned, patting me on the back. "And don't you forget it. Now let's celebrate. Pizza's on me." The pizza celebration after the big win was classic Grandma Dolores. She ordered 3 large pies, sat at the head of the table like a victorious general, and recounted every moment of the game with the enthusiasm of a sports commentator. "And then," she said, waving a slice of pepperoni in the air, "I saw Barry about to kick it into our own net again, so I just threw myself at the ball. You should have seen their faces. Priceless." Barry, sitting quietly in the corner with his soda, muttered, "I was just passing it." "Passing it to whom?" Grandma shot back, raising an eyebrow. "The Golden Gliders? Not on my watch." By the time dessert rolled around, Grandma had moved on to planning the next game. "I've got a few new moves I'm thinking about trying," she announced. "What kind of moves?" I asked, half expecting her to say something ridiculous. She leaned in like she was sharing a state secret. "It's all about surprise tactics. You see, when they least expect it, BAM, you switch directions. That's normal soccer strategy," Jenna pointed out, trying not to laugh. Grandma smirked. "Maybe. But no one's ever seen it done with a purse." "A purse?" "I'm just saying," she said, shrugging. "If it works for self-defense, why not soccer?" True to her word, Grandma brought her purse to the next practice. Coach Ed took one look at it and groaned. "Dolores, what is that for?" he asked, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Motivation," she replied, swinging it experimentally. "Motivation for what?" "For them to stay out of my way," she said, nodding toward the opposing team warming up on the other side of the field. Practice that day was chaos. Every time someone tried to take the ball from Grandma, she'd swing her purse just enough to make them flinch. It wasn't exactly against the rules, but it definitely wasn't in the spirit of the game. At one point, Barry tried to intercept her, only to end up ducking as the purse sailed inches above his head. "Dolores," Coach Ed shouted. "You can't use a purse as a weapon." "It's not a weapon," Grandma called back. "It's a deterrent." Despite Coach Ed's protests, Grandma insisted on bringing the purse to their next game. When the Golden Gliders saw her step onto the field with it, they visibly hesitated. "Is she allowed to do that?" one of their players whispered to the referee. The referee just sighed. "Technically, as long as she doesn't hit anyone." The match was a comedy of errors from the start. Grandma scored the first goal by using the purse to block a defender, then booting the ball into the net. "Is that even legal?" someone from the crowd yelled. "If it wasn't, they'd call it." Grandma shouted back, jogging triumphantly down the field. Her finest moment came in the second half, when one of the Golden Gliders tried to break away with the ball. Grandma sprinted after him, purse swinging wildly. "Dolores, no!" Coach Ed yelled, but it was too late. She didn't hit him, of course. She just waved the purse close enough to make him stumble, and then she snatched the ball and scored. The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers. Even the referee was trying not to smile. By the end of the game, the Silver Strikers had won again, and Grandma was basking in the glory. "I told you," she said, patting her purse. Never underestimate a seasoned player with the right equipment. After the second victory, Grandma Dolores's reputation began to spread. People from other teams started showing up just to see the purse lady in action. The Golden Gliders even posted a video clip of her now iconic purse block on social media, and it went viral. "Grandma, you're famous," Jenna said, showing her the video. Grandma squinted at the screen. "I look good. Do they mention my goals?" "Mostly your purse," Jenna replied, laughing. "Well, as long as they spell my name right," Grandma said, brushing it off. The next game was against a team called the Platinum Panthers, known for their aggressive tactics. They had a star player named Dennis, who was as fast as he was competitive. "He's the one to watch," Coach Ed warned during practice. "Don't let him out of your sight." Grandma grinned. "Oh, I'll watch him. I'll watch him very closely." On game day, the Panthers arrived with matching black uniforms, sleek and intimidating. Dennis strutted onto the field like he owned the place, giving a smug wave to the crowd. Cocky, Grandma muttered. I like a challenge. The whistle blew, and the game was on. Dennis was quick, darting between players like a flash of lightning. But Grandma had her own kind of speed, determined, relentless, and fueled by pure willpower. Midway through the first half, Dennis broke away with the ball, heading straight for the goal. Grandma, standing midfield, narrowed her eyes and took off after him. Dolores, don't. Coach Ed started, but he didn't stand a chance. Grandma closed the gap, her red cleats kicking up dirt, and executed what could only be described as a purse feint. She swung her purse just enough to make Dennis flinch, then swept the ball out from under him with her foot. The crowd gasped as Dennis stumbled, recovering just in time to see Grandma sprinting away with the ball. Is this even allowed? Dennis shouted, throwing his arms in the air. It's called strategy, Sonny, Grandma called over her shoulder. The Panthers weren't ready for Grandma's unconventional style. Every time Dennis tried to regain control, she'd block him with her purse or fake him out with an overly dramatic whistle blow. By the second half, Dennis looked completely frazzled. She's everywhere, he complained to one of his teammates. She's unstoppable, another muttered. Grandma's crowning moment came near the end of the match. The score was tied, and the Panthers were desperate for a win. Dennis managed to steal the ball and started charging toward the goal. Grandma saw her opportunity and took it. She sprinted alongside him, purse swinging wildly. Dolores, don't you dare. Coach Ed yelled from the sidelines. Grandma didn't hit Dennis, of course, but she did toss her purse onto the field, landing it directly in his path. Dennis tripped, the ball rolled free, and Grandma scooped it up like it was the most natural thing in the world. Goal! She shouted triumphantly as she booted the ball into the net. The referee blew his whistle, signaling the end of the game. The Silver Strikers had won, and the crowd went wild. Even Dennis, now sitting on the field with Grandma's purse at his feet, had to laugh. What's in this thing? He asked, holding it up. Grandma smirked. Wouldn't you like to know? Back on the sidelines, Coach Ed looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dolores, I'm pretty sure you just broke every rule in the book. Well, Grandma said, slinging her purse over her shoulder, if they didn't want me to use it, they'd have banned purses from the field. Simple as that. What's the wildest tactic you've ever seen in a game? Would you dare go up against Grandma Dolores and her purse? Let me know in the comments. After the game against the Platinum Panthers, Grandma Dolores's purse move became the talk of the league. The local news even did a segment on her, dubbing her the Granny with the Golden Goals. They're calling me a legend, Grandma announced at dinner that week, holding up the newspaper with her picture plastered across the sports section. I think they're calling you controversial, Jenna corrected, pointing at the part where the Panthers coach was quoted saying, "We need to discuss the legality of purses on the field." Grandma waved it off. Controversy is just another word for fame. As much as we admired her confidence, the league wasn't as amused. Coach Ed got a stern email from the league commissioner about excessive use of personal items during matches. Dolores, Coach Ed said at the next practice, pinching the bridge of his nose, "They're not banning you, but they're banning the purse." What? Grandma's jaw dropped. It's in the new league rules. No personal accessories on the field. Grandma crossed her arms, her face set in defiance.
Fine.
No purse. But they can't ban strategy. The next match was against the Emerald Eagles, a team known for their teamwork and precise passing. Grandma showed up without her purse, but with the same fiery determination. "All right, Dolores," Coach Ed said nervously, "just play by the rules this time, okay?" Grandma smirked. "Don't worry, Coach. I've got a few new tricks up my sleeve." From the start, it was clear Grandma wasn't letting the new rules slow her down. Without her purse, she relied on pure grit and creativity. At one point, she distracted an opposing player by loudly complimenting his socks. "Nice Argyle pattern," she shouted mid-play, throwing him off just long enough to steal the ball. "Thanks," the player replied instinctively before realizing he'd been duped. Later, during a corner kick, Grandma positioned herself in front of the goalie and began tying her shoe, very, very slowly. "Dolores, get out of the way," the goalie barked. "Hold your horses." Grandma replied, deliberately taking her time. By the time she stood up, the ball had already been kicked, and Barry managed to score.
See?
Grandma said, dusting off her hands. Who needs a purse? The game took an even funnier turn when Grandma decided to take on the role of on-field coach. Barry, stop hesitating and just kick the ball, she shouted. Judy, keep your elbows in. This isn't ballet. Steve, if you're going to run, run like you mean it. By halftime, half the team was following her instructions more than Coach Ed's. The game ended in a dramatic 3-3 tie, with Grandma scoring the final goal by outmaneuvering two defenders with a spin move she claimed she picked up from figure skating. Dolores, Coach Ed said afterward, shaking his head, you're going to give me a heart attack. Good cardio for you, Coach, she replied with a grin. As we headed home, Grandma was already planning her next move. I've been thinking, she said, leaning back in the passenger seat. Maybe I'll take up basketball next. They can't ban my purse if it's part of my bag dribble. Please don't, I replied, laughing. By the time the next game rolled around, Grandma Dolores had fully embraced her purse-free strategy. If anything, it had only made her more unpredictable. The league commissioner may have banned her beloved accessory, but they hadn't banned her boundless creativity or her loud, unfiltered commentary. Dolores, Coach Ed muttered as she adjusted her neon socks on the bench, just please remember, this is supposed to be friendly competition. Friendlies? Grandma snorted, tightening her cleats. Ed, this isn't brunch. It's soccer. The Silver Strikers were up against the Sapphire Storm, a team known for their fancy footwork and dramatic flair. They arrived in matching blue jerseys, each one ironed to perfection, and posed for a team photo that looked like it belonged in a fashion magazine. Look at these peacocks, Grandma whispered to me as I helped her stretch. Bet they spent more time on their hair than their practice. The whistle blew, and Grandma wasted no time making her presence known. Within the first 5 minutes, she had already blocked 2 shots with moves that made the crowd roar with laughter. One involved an overly dramatic fall that looked like something out of a soap opera. The other? She caught the ball between her knees and waddled it to midfield before booting it away. Dolores, that's not how you dribbles. Coach Ed shouted from the sidelines. Worked, didn't it? Grandma shouted back, waving to the crowd like she was on a victory lap. The Sapphire Storm wasn't taking Grandma lightly, though. Their captain, a wiry man named Greg, decided to shadow her, determined to shut down her antics. Big mistake. Greg, sweetie, Grandma said, glancing over her shoulder. You're spending so much time following me, people might think we're on a date. The crowd erupted in laughter, and Greg turned beet red. In his moment of distraction, Grandma stole the ball and passed it to Barry, who, miraculously, managed to score. That's teamwork, Greg, Grandma called over her shoulder. Take notes? But the real comedy gold came in the second half. With the game tied 2-2, the Sapphire Storm was awarded a penalty kick. Greg stepped up, clearly eager to redeem himself. As he lined up his shot, Grandma strolled over to the goalie, Judy, and whispered something in her ear. What are they plotting? Jenna muttered from the sidelines, pulling out her phone to record. The whistle blew, and Greg launched his kick, a powerful shot aimed at the top corner. Judy dove in the wrong direction, but out of nowhere, Grandma appeared. She had sprinted across the box and intercepted the ball with her back. The crowd gasped. The ball ricocheted off Grandma and soared back toward midfield, where Barry managed to pick it up. Greg threw his hands in the air.
She can't do that.
Of course I can, Grandma replied, dusting herself off. I've got the bruises to prove it. The final minutes of the game were pure chaos. The Sapphire Storm, desperate to break the tie, threw everything they had at the Silver Strikers. But Grandma was everywhere, blocking passes, intercepting shots, and shouting instructions at her teammates. Barry, run faster. You're not a turtle. Judy, watch the angles, not the ball. Steve, tie your shoe before you trip and take out half the team. With less than a minute left, the ball found its way to Grandma. She charged toward the goal, weaving between defenders like a pro. Greg was hot on her heels, shouting, "She's gonna try something ridiculous." And he was right. Instead of shooting, Grandma did a quick spin and backheeled the ball straight into the net. The referee blew the whistle, signaling the end of the game. The Silver Strikers had won 3-2, and Grandma was already waving to the crowd. As we packed up to leave, Greg approached Grandma, looking sheepish. "I have to admit," he said, scratching his head, "you're a lot tougher than I expected." Grandma grinned, clapping him on the shoulder. "Stick around, kid. You might learn something." The buzz around Grandma Dolores's backheel goals spread like wildfire. By the next game, the bleachers were packed with spectators, many of whom weren't even related to the teams. People just wanted to see what the granny with the golden goals would pull off next. Grandma, of course, was eating up the attention. She showed up in a custom jersey with GOAT printed on the back. "Grandma, do you even know what GOAT means?" Jenna asked as we helped her lace up her cleats. "Greatest of all time," Grandma replied, smirking. "And don't you forget it." This week, the Silver Strikers faced off against the Crimson Crushers, a notoriously physical team. Their reputation for rough play had everyone on edge, except Grandma. "Let them try to rough me up," she said during warm-ups. "I've been elbowing my way through Black Friday sales since the 80s. They've got nothing on me." Coach Ed, already looking stressed, sighed. "Dolores, just try not to escalate anything." "No promises," Grandma replied, adjusting her shin guards. The game started with a bang, literally. One of the Crushers collided with Barry in the first 30 seconds, sending him tumbling into the grass. "Barry, you okay?" Grandma called out, jogging over. "Yeah, I'm fine," Barry mumbled, brushing dirt off his jersey. Grandma turned to the offending player, a burly guy named Mike, and fixed him with a glare. "You mess with my teammate again and you'll have to deal with me." Mike laughed. "What are you going to do, Granny?" Grandma didn't answer. She just smiled, a smile that made me feel a little sorry for Mike. Minutes later, Mike tried to body check Grandma during a play, but she sidestepped him with a move so smooth it left him stumbling. "You okay there, Sonny?" she asked sweetly as she dribbled past him. The crowd roared with laughter, and Mike's face turned red. As the game went on, the Crushers started playing dirtier, shoving and elbowing every chance they got. But Grandma was ready. When one player tried to trip her, she jumped over his leg and yelled, "Nice try." When another grabbed her jersey, she spun so quickly he let go out of sheer confusion. And when Mike barreled toward her again, she did something none of us expected. She threw herself onto the ground, clutching her ankle. The referee's whistle blew, and the crowd gasped. "Dolores!" Coach Ed shouted, running toward her. "I'm fine," Grandma whispered as she peeked up at the referee. "Just watch." The referee walked over, glaring at Mike.
Foul.
"Free kick." Grandma limped to her feet, her grin widening as she lined up the shot. "Grandma, did you just fake an injury?" Jenna whispered from the sidelines. "Strategy," Grandma replied, winking. The free kick was a thing of beauty. Grandma curled the ball around the wall of defenders and straight into the net. The crowd went wild, chanting her name as she jogged back to midfield. "You're unbelievable," Barry said, shaking his head. "I know," Grandma replied, patting him on the back. The Crushers, now down by 1 goal, were desperate to even the score. With only a few minutes left, Mike made one final push toward the Silver Strikers' goal. Grandma was there to meet him, of course. "You're not getting past me," she said, standing her ground. Mike smirked. "We'll see about that." What happened next was pure chaos. Mike tried to muscle his way through, but Grandma stuck out her foot and cleanly stole the ball. He stumbled, lost his balance, and fell flat on his back. The ball rolled to Barry, who passed it to Judy, who scored the final goal of the game. The referee blew the whistle, and the Silver Strikers celebrated their 2-1 victory. Grandma walked over to Mike, who was still sitting in the grass, and offered him a hand. "Good game," she said. Mike hesitated, then shook his head with a laugh. "You're something else, Granny. Tell your teammates," she replied with a wink. As we packed up to leave, Coach Ed looked at Grandma and said, "Dolores, I don't know if I should be proud or terrified." "Probably both," Grandma replied, slinging her bag over her shoulder. The Silver Strikers' streak of wins, and Grandma Dolores's antics, had reached legendary status. People from neighboring towns were now showing up to watch their games, and even the league commissioner was spotted in the crowd one week, scribbling notes and shaking his head. "Grandma, you're basically a celebrity," Jenna said as we arrived at the field for the next match. "Not basically," Grandma corrected, adjusting her jersey. "I am a celebrity. Just don't let it go to your head," Coach Ed muttered, already looking exhausted. The Strikers were up against the Amber Aces, a team known for their speed and sharp tactics. Their star player, Linda, was a force to be reckoned with, a retired track star who could outrun just about anyone on the field. "Watch out for her," Coach Ed warned during warm-ups. "She's fast and she's clever." Grandma scoffed. "Fast isn't everything. It's about brains, Ed. And I've got plenty of that." As the game began, it became clear that Linda was as good as advertised. She darted around defenders with ease, her orange cleats flashing in the sunlight. Within the first 10 minutes, she'd already scored a goal, leaving the Strikers scrambling. Grandma, however, wasn't impressed. "She's all flash," she muttered to me during a water break.
Watch.
"I'll slow her down."
How?
I asked, raising an eyebrow. Grandma just smirked. "You'll see." The next time Linda got the ball, Grandma sprang into action. Instead of chasing her, she started running parallel to her, shouting, "Hey, Linda, did you hear about the new league rules?" Linda hesitated, clearly thrown off. "What rules?" "Oh, just that they're thinking of banning orange cleats," Grandma replied casually. "What?" While Linda faltered, Barry managed to steal the ball and pass it upfield. "Dolores," Coach Ed shouted from the sidelines. "You can't distract players like that." "It's called psychological warfare, Ed," Grandma shouted back. But Linda wasn't so easily shaken. She came back stronger, weaving through defenders like a hot knife through butter. By halftime, the score was tied 2-2, and the tension on the field was palpable. Grandma, of course, was unfazed. "Let her run circles," she said during the break. "I've got a plan." Her plan, as it turned out, involved using Linda's speed against her. In the second half, every time Linda got the ball, Grandma would position herself just far enough away to make it look like she wasn't paying attention. When Linda inevitably tried to sprint past her, Grandma would step in at the last second and block her path, forcing her to change direction. "She's like a brick wall," Linda complained to her teammates. The game reached its climax in the final minutes. With the score still tied, the Aces were awarded a corner kick. Linda, of course, was the one to take it. Grandma stood near the goal, watching intently. As Linda prepared to kick, Grandma called out, "Hey, Linda, is it true you can't score from corners?" Linda glared at her. "Watch me." She launched the ball into the box, where it ricocheted off one of her own teammates and rolled harmlessly out of bounds. "Guess not," Grandma said with a shrug, earning laughter from the crowd. With seconds left on the clock, the Strikers managed to get the ball to Grandma. She sprinted upfield, Linda hot on her heels. "You're not getting past me this time," Linda shouted. Grandma grinned. "I don't need to." At the last second, she passed the ball to Barry, who tapped it into the net just as the whistle blew. The Strikers erupted in cheers. As the teams lined up to shake hands, Linda approached Grandma, still catching her breath. "You're unbelievable," she said, shaking her head. Grandma grinned, patting her on the shoulder. "Stick with me, kid. You might learn something." The Silver Strikers were on a roll, and Grandma Dolores had officially become the league's most talked-about player. Everywhere we went, people stopped her to say things like, "Hey, aren't you the one who faked an injury?" Or, "Is it true you used a purse to win a game?" Grandma would nod graciously, like she was accepting an award. "Yes, that's me." And no, it wasn't just a purse, it was strategy. For the final game of the season, the Strikers were up against the Ruby Rockets, a team undefeated for 3 straight years. The Rockets were disciplined, fast, and not easily rattled, a combination that even Grandma admitted was annoyingly effective. "This is it," Coach Ed said during practice. "Our toughest match yet. Stay focused, stick to the basics, and whatever you do, don't let them get inside your head." Grandma, stretching dramatically, smirked. "Ed, You should be telling them not to let me get inside their heads. Game day arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. The stands were packed, with fans from both teams waving signs and cheering loudly. Grandma's personal fan club, a mix of neighbors, former opponents, and curious onlookers, had even brought a banner that read, "Goat Granny." As the teams lined up on the field, the Rockets' captain, Sarah, walked over to Grandma. "I've heard about you," Sarah said, sizing her up. "We're not going to let you pull any of your tricks." Grandma smiled sweetly. "Oh, honey, my tricks aren't for you to let or not let. They just happen." From the first whistle, it was clear the Rockets were a different breed. Their passing was flawless, their defense impenetrable, and their speed unmatched. Within 10 minutes, they had already scored a goal. The strikers, meanwhile, were struggling to keep up. Barry tripped over his own feet twice, Judy missed an easy pass, and even Grandma was having trouble finding an opening. "They're good," Grandma admitted during a water break. "But they're not unbeatable. What's the plan?" I asked, handing her a towel.
She grinned.
"Something bold." In the second half, Grandma switched up her tactics. Instead of focusing on scoring, she started disrupting the Rockets' rhythm. Every time Sarah tried to pass the ball, Grandma would dart in and block her line of sight. "Move, Granny," Sarah shouted, clearly frustrated. "Make me," Grandma replied, grinning. At one point, Sarah tried to outmaneuver Grandma with a quick turn, only to trip over her own feet and fall flat on the grass. "Careful," Grandma called out. "The ground's not as soft as it looks." The crowd roared with laughter, and Sarah's frustration grew. With 5 minutes left on the clock, the score was tied 1-1. The Rockets were on the attack, their players moving like a well-oiled machine. It looked like they were about to score when Grandma made her move. Instead of going for the ball, she started clapping loudly and shouting, "Defense! Defense!" Her teammates, confused but trusting her instincts, followed suit. The Rockets, distracted by the sudden noise, hesitated just long enough for Judy to steal the ball and pass it upfield. Grandma sprinted toward the goal, her neon socks flashing as the crowd went wild. Sarah was hot on her heels, shouting, "Not this time." "Oh, sweetie," Grandma called back, "this time is every time." With one final burst of energy, she launched the ball into the top corner of the net, scoring the winning goal just as the whistle blew. The field erupted into chaos. Fans cheered, players hugged, and Coach Ed looked like he might faint from sheer relief. Grandma, ever the showwoman, took a bow in front of the stands. As the teams lined up to shake hands, Sarah approached Grandma with a grudging smile. "All right, I'll admit it, you're the real deal." Grandma grinned, patting her on the back. "You're not so bad yourself, kid. Keep practicing, and maybe one day you'll catch up to me." On the ride home, Jenna turned to Grandma and asked, "So, what's next? Another season?" Grandma leaned back, a satisfied smile on her face. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll try something new. I hear pickleball is all the rage." The whole car burst into laughter. "What's the most unforgettable sports moment you've ever seen? Do you think Grandma Dolores should keep playing soccer, or should she conquer another sport? Let me know in the comments."